and I don't think that's where we want them to be learning about any of these topics.
If you have never developed sufficient interest in the workings of a public school board, at least at the Arlington Public Schools in Arlington, Virginia, there is a rather set process for providing residents and others interested in the community affairs to present public comments, generally limited to just 2 minutes. If the only thing that you hope to accomplish is to be given an opportunity to be heard, this is an excellent opportunity to do so for civic engagement, even if not quite an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel. But do not expect much to happen just because you took the time to come down to provide whatever conceptions you might hold in your head for just 2 minutes, which should be rather obvious from the title on the agenda, which clearly designates that period as public comment and not action items, which generally follow the public comments and are done by the members who have been elected to the school board. The more you understand a process, especially in government and politics, the more that you can be effective developing reasonably calculated measures to accomplish that well-considered objective, having defined the threat in quantifiable terms that you had set out to attack, often articulated in a clear mission statement that will specifically define for you what success looks like. A clear picture. Failure to properly plan inevitably results in disappointing results. And it is far easier to hit a target that you can see than one that you don't even have. If you wish to play baseball and just swing the bat and wait to see what happens, just try to recall the memorable and wonderful words from Tom Hanks in the film A League of Their Own: there is no crying in baseball. Play ball. And on November 30th, the Arlington Public School Board had voted upon an action item regarding modifications to the Family Life Curriculum Policy. Specifically, the action item was titled Revisions to School Board Policy I-7.1.8 Family Life Education Explanation, which had been worked at the staff level by a Dr. Stephen Marcoux, a director for Policy and Legislative Affairs. Generally, a vote on an agenda item for agency action will be preceded by a meeting during which the members of the school board will provide an opportunity to review an information item regarding the proposed policy change. And school board policies are within the constitutional authority of only the school boards, while it remains the responsibility, after approval of a policy provision, for the superintendent and his staff to publish what are described as policy implementation procedures, detailing in minutes details for procedures and regulations to be implemented for practice in subordinate departments. For those a little more advanced in civics and understanding of the powers in government, which enable actions to actually get accomplished, and who are further familiar with the Constitution under Article 3, you, and certainly judicial activists, know that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish, while expressly describing that power above and beyond a power guaranteed under the First Amendment for free speech. The judicial power shall extend to all cases and controversies in law and in equity, and as stated in one of the landmark cases from an inchoate democratic republic, it is the emphatic duty and province of the judicial departments to say what the law is, granting to that branch of government the power to provide definition to a rule of law, often referred to as precedents, published in judicial opinions, which generally have far more legal effect than a 2-minute exercise of your right to free speech, no matter what feelings of efficacy and empowerment you may derive from that exercise of a right may provide for you. Just like to hear themselves talk. Some just like the applause, some just like the attention, and to that extent you have that right to be heard. But for effectiveness and bang for the buck, one could generally consider a day in court to be of a bit more substantive value. For this purpose, those who actually want to use force, especially amongst progressives, flock to law schools to become JD Knights, equipped not necessarily with a lightsaber, but sufficiently acquainted with legal precedents and court procedure to engage in battle against the dark and evil empire, to employ a dualistic analogy. And taking, for example, the most recent action for the Arlington Public School Board, there is a provision under the Virginia Code, specifically codified at VA Code Section 22.187, which explains the procedures to be followed for those ready to fight tonight, engage in a process described as judicial review of agency action. And at least those progressive judicial activists are aware of that which is described by attorneys as regulatory deference, under which doctrine there is a basic presumption of judicial review for one suffering legal wrong because of an agency action so as to establish standing. However, that presumption can be rebutted by showing that the relevant statute precludes review or the agency action is committed to agency discretion by law. And as a practical matter, when an agency refuses to act, there is no action to provide a focus for judicial review, simply because no surviving record for review will arise from an agency's inaction. But an action that provides a focus for judicial review is ripe for opportunities. And laying out the basis of a plan of attack, generally in a facial challenge, the most difficult challenge to mount because there can be no circumstance under which the agency action might be considered valid in categorical exclusion, or through an as-applied challenge, as described by Reverend King in his letter from a Birmingham jail cell when he had, in a rather well-developed exposition, stated that sometimes a law is just on its face and unjust in its application, hence as applied, suggesting that, for instance, there is nothing wrong in having an ordinance which requires a permit for a parade. But such an ordinance becomes unjust when it is used to maintain segregation and to deny citizens the First Amendment privilege of peaceful assembly and protest, as applied, establishing standing for an illegitimate purpose, and in court, abuse of discretion. And in courts, it is a foundational principle of administrative law that judicial review of agency action is limited to the grounds that the agency invoked when it took the action. Moreover, if those grounds are inadequate, a court may remand the agency to, among other things, provide an opportunity to offer a fuller explanation of the agency's reasoning at the time of the action, and speculative harms are traditionally eschewed by courts. Under VA Code Section 22.1-87, any parent, custodian, or legal guardian of a pupil attending the public schools in a school division who is aggrieved, harmed by an action of the school board may, within only 30 days after such action, petition the circuit court having jurisdiction in the school division to review the action of the school board. Not the general district court, but the circuit court, state court. So since November 30th, the clock in Arlington is ticking for the statute of limitations to have told, barring the availability of this remedy for those parents, custodians, or legal guardians of a pupil in the Arlington Public Schools who felt grieved by this agency action regarding the family life curriculum. However, for those Jedi Knights prepared to attack this veritable Death Star, note that the action of the school board shall be sustained unless the school board exceeded its authority, acted arbitrarily or capriciously, or had abused its discretion. And if you cannot make that case in the legal argument, remember that there is no crying in baseball.
And I don't think that's where we want them to be learning about any of these topics.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.